Hello class, today we're going to talk about area one more time. Okay, this is day 2 of our area, so I'm going to run through each of the formulas that you need in order to be able to complete your assignment today. Okay, so let's remember, all of your formulas are found on your formula chart. Okay, they're found in one big bold section, this little section right here, and that's the section that we're looking for right now. So let's zoom in on it. Okay, in this particular formula chart, you're given several things. You're given one, circumference formulas for circles. Okay, circumference is the same thing as perimeter of a regular figure. Okay, now to do circumference, what you're going to do, there's two formulas, and it depends on what you're given, whether you're given an R or you're given a D. And we know that R stands for radius and D stands for diameter. And we'll get more into that once we get to the circles. And all you have to do is multiply 2 times pi times radius, or just pi times diameter. And what you might want to write on your paper is that pi is equivalent to 3.14, and that's what we're going to be using for pi for any time we see that. Okay, we're not going to use the pi button on the calculator. We're going to use 3.14, so please remember to do that. Your answers will be different if you don't use that particular number. We also can find the area of a triangle with areas equal to 1/2 base times height. Now, for me personally, we didn't talk about this the last time we were together, but one of the formulas that I like to do something with this formula for the triangle formula and the trapezoid formula. Anytime it's got a 1/2 there, we know that we're going to divide by 2. So I like to rewrite my formula as A is equal to BH over 2. So that just means I multiply my base and my height together, and then I divide it by 2. Same thing for the trapezoid formula. I like to write it as parenthesis B1 plus B2 times H divide by 2. Okay, and that just allows me to remember that the last thing I do once I do the math is I have to divide my answer by 2. And again, here on the circle, we've got pi r squared, which we know is pi, which is the 3.14 that we've just talked about, times radius. And again, we'll talk about that once we get to the circles. Okay, so let's review what we talked about the last time we met. Okay, we started talking about this particular shape right here. Now, this shape is what we call a composite figure because it was made from a rectangle and a triangle. Okay, a rectangle and a triangle. And what we did was we found the area of each of those and we added them together. Okay, so you'll have to do that on at least one of the shapes on your assignment. We'll talk more about that toward the end. So now let's focus on the actual figures that we need. Okay, so the first one that we want to look at is a triangle. Okay, so if we were to look back at our formula chart and see the formula for a triangle, there's two formulas that you could use. A is equal to 1/2 BH, but we just talked about what I like to do is write it as base times height divided by 2. Now what we have to understand is what is a base and what is a height. Okay, the way you can determine a base and a height is a right angle is always drawn to or from it. Okay, so in this particular shape, the 8 is considered our base and the 3 is considered our height because a base and a height will always be touched by a right angle. So in this particular one, what I would expect to see on your paper is 1, you write the formula down. A is equal to BH over 2. Then A is equal to, and now because it's a formula, we're just plugging in information. So we have a base of 8, so I'm going to plug that in as 8 times a height of 3. And then I'm going to divide that by 2. So you would do 8 times 3, which is 24, divide by 2 is 12. And then because it's an area, our label is centimeters squared, okay? Because we are counting, believe it or not, the little squares inside that triangle, okay? So you may be asking, so what is the 5 and the 5 for? Okay, well, some of the other questions I will ask you is, what is the perimeter of this shape? Perimeter is the distance around the shape. Now, what you have to understand about some of these shapes is there are dark lines or solid lines and dotted lines. The solid lines represent actual measurements of the shape itself. The dotted lines are just measurements. They're not part of the figure itself. Okay, so if I'm looking for perimeter, what I want to do is I want to add up all the sides around the figure that will go from a starting point all the way around. It's kind of like putting a fence around it. Okay, so to find the perimeter, all we're doing is adding those pieces together. So perimeter is the only time where I do not expect a formula to be written. Okay, but to find the perimeter of this particular shape, I'm going to take the 8, I'm going to add the 5, and I'm going to add the other 5 to it. Okay, so if we do 8 plus 5 plus 5, I'm going to get 18. Now, since it's just a distance around, our label is just centimeters, not centimeters squared. Centimeters squared is reserved for area. Okay, so that's how we do triangles. So let's try one more just to be on the safe side. Okay, so here are 2 of them. Okay, so what I would like for you to do is pause the video just for a moment, find the area of one of them, and then turn the video on and I will go over both of those questions. Okay, so let's find out how you did. Okay, so on this first one, I'm going to find area, because that's what it's asking me to do, equals, and I'm going to do the base. Well, the base in this case, I find my right angle, and the 2 things that it touches is the 8.2 and the 1.8. So that is my base and my height. So base times height divided by 2, always start with the formula. Then area is equal to 8.2 times 1.8 divided by 2. So area is equal to, now in this particular instance, I'm going to have to pull up my calculator to be able to do this. So I got 8.2 times 1.8 equals, and then I'm going to divide that by 2, and we end up with 7.38. So 7.38, and in this case, feet squared. Okay, there are no rounding instructions, so I leave my answer as is. For the second one, we'll start off with the same way. A is equal to BH divided by 2. A is equal to, and again, I look for the 2 pieces that are touched by the right angle. That is the 5 and the 2. Okay, so 5 times 2 divided by 2. So area is equal to 5 times 2 is 10, divided by 2 gives me 5. And again, that would be meters squared. And that's what I'm looking for all of these shapes. So that's how you do triangles. Okay, so now what if I asked you to find perimeter of these? What would you do? Well, to find perimeter, we know that we would start at a corner. We would add this, this, and this. So we would do 8.2 plus 4 plus 5 for perimeter of this shape. And for B, you would add 5 and 2 and 5.4. And that's how you'd find the perimeter. Okay, so now let's look at a trapezoid. The trapezoid is the next shape that we have to understand how to do. Okay, now if we were to go back to our formula chart and look at trapezoid, our trapezoid formula is the B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. Okay, so we got to figure out what the heck is this B1 and B2 thing. Okay, well, if you look at a trapezoid has 2 bases, and that's basically what we're looking for. Okay, we want this first base, which is 40, and the second base, which is 28. And that's what we're going to use in order to find the area of this particular trapezoid. All right, so our formula is A is equal to parenthesis B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. Now, if you like the other formula with the 1/2, then feel free to use that. So now A is equal to, so the first thing that we have to find are our 2 bases. Now, the easiest way to find the 2 bases is a height is always going to be drawn from a base. And again, that's going to be touched by that right angle. So in this case, here's our height. So that means the 2 bases are the 2 pieces that it touches, which is that 40 and the 28. So it doesn't matter which one we use, okay, is B1. So I'm going to say 40 plus, and then whatever I used for B1, I use the other one for B2, which is 28, times how tall it is, which is the distance between those 2 shapes, which is 4, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. Now again, I'm going to go get my calculator on this one. Oops, sorry about that. Oh well. So here we go. Let's see if I can do this. So 40, okay, times, clear, 40 plus 28, and this is what I like to do. I like to do 40 plus 28, hit enter, then multiply by how tall it is, which in this case is 4, hit enter, and then I take that whole thing and divide it by 2. Okay, so Let's try that one more time. So we take our two bases, we add them together, because what I like to do is like to force order of operations. So 40 plus 28, enter, okay, times how tall it is, 4, enter, and then divide that by 2, enter. And that gives me 136. So let's go back to our page here. So we would do A is equal to 136, and in this case, feet squared, because we are trying to find area. All right, so that's how we do a trapezoid. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, so here are two trapezoids. What I'd like for you to do is pause the video, okay, and answer one of them. And then when you come back, I will talk about both of them. Okay, so let's find out how you did. Okay, so in this first one for A, it's kind of a weird trapezoid, but it's still a trapezoid. So we'll do B1 plus B2 times h divided by 2. That's my formula. So now again, I told you that your base, or your bases in this case, are going to be the two that are touched by the right angle. Okay, so here is my height, here's my right angle. So that tells me my 4.5 and my 2 are my bases. Now, since that 4.5 is a fraction, I'm going to change that to 4.5, and then plus 2. Then I'm going to multiply by how tall it is, which is the distance between the two bases. So in this case, it is 4, but you'll notice that that height is actually a horizontal distance. Okay, that's okay. Okay, and then we're going to divide that by 2. Okay, and the other one, what we would do is we would do the same thing. A is equal to B1 plus B2 times h divided by 2. So in this case, it's more traditional. Okay, we've got a base that is 33. We've got a base that is 24. And it's touched by this right angle, which is 12. Okay, so those are my measurements. So 24 plus 33 times 12. Then divide that by 2. Now we go to our calculator, and we can find the area of both of those. Okay, so here is my calculator. So in this first one, I'm going to do 4.5 plus 2, enter, times 4, enter, divide by 2, enter. And we get 13 for that one. So 13, and in this case, feet squared. For the second one, I end up with 24 plus 33, enter, times 12, enter, divide by 2, enter, and we end up with 342 for that one. 342 millimeters squared. And that's how you do trapezoids. Okay, so we've learned triangles, we've learned trapezoids. So now the next figure, which in my opinion is probably the hardest one to do, is the circle. Okay, so here are our circles. Now in this particular one, it says I want to find the area of this circle. Okay, so to find the area of a circle, okay, if we were to go back to our formula chart, the area of a circle is pi r squared. Okay, so even though you know pi's are not squared, they're round, but that's just a circle joke. Okay, so in this particular one, what we're going to do is we're going to do A is equal to pi r squared. So what this formula says is we need to find a radius. Okay, so what we need to make sure of is that we understand the idea of what the vocabulary of a circle is. So if I have a circle right here, oops, that was a bad circle. Let me try that again. That's not much better, but okay, so this distance right here is called a radius. Okay, it's the distance from the center to the circle itself. Okay, now if I were to do two of those radii, okay, that is called a diameter. A diameter is what we call a chord. It's a line segment that goes all the way across the circle, and it passes through the center of the circle. Okay, that diameter is equal to 2 radii. Okay, but what we need to understand is that radius squared does not mean substitute in a diameter. Radius squared really means pi times radius times radius. So whatever the radius is, we do it twice. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to actually write it this way so that it helps me remember that I've got to do radius times radius. So in this problem, area is equal to, now it says we're going to use 3.14 for pi. We're not going to use the pi button. So 3.14 times, and then in this particular problem, I'm given the distance halfway across, which is a radius. So I do times 7 times 7. Now at this point, because pi is an approximate value of 3.14, I'm going to change my equal sign to a squiggly equals, which means approximately. We go to our calculator, 3.14 times 7 times 7, enter. We end up with 153.86. But we do pay attention to our rounding rules here. It says round to the nearest tenth. So that tells me the area is going to be approximately 153.9, and in this case, centimeters squared, because we are still finding area. It is centimeters squared. And that's how you find the area of a circle. Okay, it's really simple. Now, the other thing I ask you for is circumference. Okay, so on this assignment, you're going to have to find circumference of a circle. Okay, well, there's two circumference formulas. And you can do C is equal to pi times diameter, or C is equal to 2 times pi times radius. Now, I told you that this diameter is equal to 2r. So that's basically where these formulas come from. Okay, I personally like to always use this formula right here, because I'm smart enough that I can always find, no matter what I've got, I can find a diameter. Okay, now if you want to use this one because I'm only given a radius, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so C is equal to, again, pi is 3.14 times, well, I know a diameter is all the way across a circle. So if I know halfway across, all the way across is just double that. So it's times 14. Or you could use C is equal to 2 times 3.14 times 7, and you will get the same exact answer. Okay, so now again, since I plugged in 3.14, I do turn my equal sign into an approximate sign. I go to my calculator, do 3.14 times 14, hit enter, and I get 43.96. Now again, we've got some rounding rules, round to the nearest tenth. So that means that my circumference is going to be 44 centimeters. And since circumference is just a distance around, it's like perimeter, it's not centimeters squared, it's just centimeters. And on the other one, I would get the same exact thing, 43.96, which would give me 44 centimeters. Because we know that this 6 is going to bump the 9 to a 10, which then bumps the 3 to a 4. Okay, so that's how we find area and circumference. Now, we got one more type of shape that I want to talk about real quick before we finish this lesson. Okay, and that is, what if I give you something like this? Well, if we were to look at our formula chart, we don't have a formula for this particular shape. Because I'll be real honest, this shape is a hexagon. It's got 6 sides on it. So, what do we have to do? Well, one of the things that we do is we divide the shape up into figures that we know. And if we were to look back at this formula chart, I know circle, I know triangle, I know rectangle parallelogram, I know trapezoid, and I know circle. So we want to divide this shape up into figures like that. Okay, so there's 2 ways that you could divide this one, in my opinion. Okay, one, you could divide it right here, okay? Or you could divide it right here, and either one would work. I personally like the first one. Okay, so I'm going to chop a line right there, or drop a line right there, and find the area of those 2 rectangles and add them together. Okay, so if that's what I wanted to find, that's what I'd do. And I'd look at this shape right here. Okay, and I know that this one is A is equal to base times height. Area is equal to, well, our base is 8, our height is 15, and we multiply those together. Okay, so I get my calculator out, 8 times 15, I get 120. 120, in this case, meters squared. And then I do the same thing with the other one. Area is equal to base times height. Area is equal to 10 times 8. So in this case, area is equal to 80 meters squared. So to find the total area of this, then, we take the first area and the second area, and we add them together. So that tells me the area of this whole shape is 200 meters squared. Okay. Now, what if I also asked you to find perimeter of this shape? Do I have enough information to be able to find the perimeter of this shape? Well, let's see. I know this piece. I know this piece. But, I don't know this one. But I know the 10, and I know the 8, And I don't know this one, but could I find them? Yes. Okay, well, I know if this is 8 and this is 10, that tells me that this down here is 18 meters. And I know that if this whole thing right here is 15 and this is 8, I could find this one by subtracting those, and that would tell me that this one is 7 meters. Now, with that in mind, I could actually find the perimeter. I could do 15 plus 8, which is 23, plus 7 is 30, plus 10 is 40, plus 8 is 48, plus 18 is 58, 68, take away 2 is 66 meters, if I did my math correctly. So we just sometimes have to find all the missing pieces before we can actually find its perimeter. Now, what you're going to do on your homework assignment is something very similar. I've given you several shapes here. Okay, here's the first 3. Here's the next 2. Okay, and then 2 more. Okay, and for each one of those, I'm wanting you to find the perimeter and the area. So the first thing is we have to identify what kind of shapes we have. So in this first one, this one is a trapezoid. Okay, the second one is a triangle. The third one is also a trapezoid. The fourth one is a triangle. The fifth one is what we call a composite shape. Okay, so this one you're going to have to chop it up like we did that one in our lesson just then, and find the area of each individual piece and then add them together. This is the only one where you don't have to find the perimeter. And then last but not least, find area and circumference. In number 6, we're given a radius. And on number 7, we're given a diameter. Okay, and using those formulas, you can find the area and circumference of each of those circles. Okay, so you can go back in your notes or go back in this video to look at specific figures to be able to find their areas and circumference. Okay, so until tomorrow, I'll see you later.